All right, the Broncos won. I can't believe it. The Broncos won. Actually, I can believe it. I mean, you're going against Trace McSorley. For the love of God, you had better win. The Broncos did that, coming out on top against the Arizona Cardinals. It is Week 15 action in the National Football League, and I'm Cecil Lammey here to talk about it. It's Orange and Blue today, Monday through Friday, 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Andrew Mason at the press conference for Nathaniel Hackett. He'll be joining me shortly. A little bit of an abbreviated show today. Have you about 20 minutes-ish, and we will talk about what happened yesterday and how it feels good. And I want to emphasize that for Broncos fans out there. And listen, the 20,000 no-shows, and it was more than they reported. It always is, right? You got to spin it. What's up, Chris? Listen, this feels good. It feels good. It doesn't mean anything, okay? And I understand that there's a segment of Broncos fans that actually didn't want the Broncos to win, which I'm never going to tell a fan how to fan. But I believe that this fear-mongering over they'll keep Nathaniel Hackett, like I don't think they will. I don't believe they will, nor should they. Hello, Paul. I don't believe that the Broncos will be keeping Nathaniel Hackett. I believe on Black Monday he will be handed his walking papers, as this has already transpired. It's what he has put himself in. And if you win against a bad Cardinals team, it's not going to mean, oh my God, now they totally got to keep him. And yes, they got up for the Chiefs. And yes, the offenses look better. And, well, I look at the situation, I go, okay, it doesn't matter. Feels good. I'm glad they won. Doesn't matter. Tom asked the questions, why should we trust George Paton to hire a better coach? But we shouldn't. We shouldn't. But it's not going to be George Paton by himself. You have an ownership. And in talking to people around the league, both good owners and bad owners, the people that work for teams, not the actual owners, I've talked to a couple over my time, but owners, you don't get much access to the owners. Although there is one person close to Greg Penner in the national media. His name's Adam Schefter. So other than that, nobody's really close to this ownership group. But it's the ownership group that's going to be doing and making that decision. It's the ownership group that are bazillionaires, okay? And it's the ownership group that, while they don't know nothing about football, like, yeah, but they want to, and they're in the building every day, and they're working their ass off, and they're pissed off that this team is like this, that these fans are, tickets were $5. Tickets were $5. So again, we already know, like, okay, and I can shake my fist at the heavens and be like, George Paton sucks. He's not going anywhere. Okay. Now, the question is legitimate from Tom. Like, why should we trust George Paton? Well, they're not going to trust George Paton by himself. Paton will be part of the process, I'm sure. And I'm sure that his 2 cents will be listened to and welcomed to a certain degree. But at the end of the day, this isn't going to be George Paton. You actually have owners. And the problem of not having owners, and God bless Joe Ellis, he did his best, but he's not the owner. You can't be a pretend owner in the NFL. You have to be the buck stops with me. With Mr. Bolin, it was the buck stopped with him. Now with Greg Penner, the buck stops with him. Yes, they have an ownership group. Yes, they're going to listen to a lot of different people, but it's now a final decision. Someone who makes that call, not just this random mystery collective and like, okay, the trust is going to, The trust was there largely to double dip and just kind of shepherd things on. And fortunately, they got Super Bowl 50 and, all that. It's ownership now. I'm getting off track. So hold on, Tom. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about the coaching search. But yes, George Paton's going to be here. So we can either do one of two things. We can lose our mind and George Paton should never be here. Or we can be like, okay, he's going to be here. Do a better job. And for me, I'd rather do the latter. I would rather do the latter of like, okay, do a better job. Now that he's going to be here, make sure that you have a better understanding of what you need to find in a head coach and you're not confused by Happy Fun Baby Star. But back to the game. This is something that feels good. And as Steven says in the chat room, like, feels better than a loss for sure. I mean, you lost Trace McSorley. I know things are bad. Things are incredibly bad in Arizona. Like the Broncos are bad. Arizona is terrible, like an actual dumpster fire. Many, many things going on. I don't necessarily have time or the desire to get into everything, but there's more than the public knows that will be revealed. And again, it's kind of like Denver. There's more stuff that we know that we can't really say. And once Nathaniel Hackett's fired, then I'm sure the floodgates will open, and that will be that. But Russell Wilson's going to be here. George Paton's going to be here. So, like, it's just not as interesting to me, really, honestly, because I have faith in the Greg Penner and the Walton Penner group. Maybe that's bad faith. Maybe I'm dumb for having faith in Walton Penner group. But again, like, I want to look at the positive. I don't want to live in a world and think like, well, the Broncos have bad owners and bad coaches and a bad quarterback and a bad GM and bad fans. Like, no, God, like, no, you know how miserable that would be? Wake up every day and be like, everything sucks. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to look at things logically and rationally. Is George Paton the best GM in the world? No. His day 3 sucked last year. Absolutely sucked. Dulcich is fine. Benito is okay. He needs to be better against the run. But Montreal Washington sucks. Delarian Turner-Yell, a pick before Tariq Woolen. That sucks. Like, you just did terrible picks in day 3. Absolutely awful picks. Not everybody, and they'll salvage some special teams guys or whatever, but there were legitimate stars. Started for the Chiefs, Isaiah Pacheco, arguably the best corner in the game, and Tariq Woolen. And yes, not rookie corner. I'm saying corner. They said it's arguable. I wouldn't put him there, but he's in the argument now. So, like, yeah, Peyton sucked on day 3. He needs to be better. He sucked getting Nathaniel Hackett as the head coach. So, again, what are we going to do? We're going to sit around, talk about how everything sucks, or we're going to say, okay, what are they going to do? They're going to keep Russell Wilson. They're going to keep George Paton. There was a brief moment where there was some buzz where you're like, ooh, they're going to blow out everybody. There was a brief moment. And again, more of the floodgates will be open and we'll be able to talk more about it. That moment quickly passed, I believe. And you definitely heard Adam Schefter. Again, remember who Schefter's close to. You heard Adam Schefter come out and say, George Paton, 100% not on the hot seat. And we know where that information is coming from. And so that's the way it's going to be. So do I like it? I'm not a fire Peyton guy, but I'm also not a blind, like, just let Peyton run everything type of thing. But yesterday's game is something that we can look to with some positive, because for flip's sake, and God, I wish I could cuss on this show, they finally ran the ball. Like, what in the flip took them so long? And I need an alternative word that begins with F that I can use. What in the Facebook took them so long? Like, what in the flim flarm fam filth took them so long to run the flipping ball? So stupid. This entire season. And don't give me the Wilson's got to be the star. Wilson will do what you tell him to do if you have a coach that has the backbone to tell him what to do. I think it's pretty logical to assume Russell Wilson being the yes sir, no sir type of guy. And this is where Nathaniel Hackett comes in. Hackett is terrible as a head coach, awful as a head coach. So they won yesterday. It doesn't matter. Like, it feels better. It's better than a loss. Seattle suffers in their draft pick, whatever. If you have Schadenfreude against the Seahawks, I just can't stand some of their fans, not all of them, but some of their fans, the 12th man, which they stole from Texas A&M, but like, whatever, dude. Like, I'm here to emphasize the positive. I'm here to look forward to the future. I'm already digging into the draft. I'm already looking forward to the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl and the Combine and Pro Days and all that stuff, because it's better than this. It's better than arguing whether they should have won or not in a meaningless game against Arizona. Now, you stay healthy, you go out there, compete, you try to get the win. It's a Cardinals team that's awful. You get the win and it feels good. And as I said on Twitter, which is the most important thing ever, and I'm being sarcastic because Twitter sucks and it has since it was invented. Listen, it just feels better, okay? The season's been so bad. It's been so bad. And they're not getting that pick anyway. So it's not like they cost themselves. Oh my God, now they're number 4 instead of number 2. Like, whatever. It's Seattle's pick. Yesterday felt good. Yesterday you got some signs and some clues as to what you can do. Now it's Vance Joseph defense, and you could say, well, the Arizona Cardinals and they suck and all this sorts of things. But like, you ran the ball finally. This team should have been running the ball from day one. They should have been out there with Russell Wilson under center, handing off the ball 35 times per game. And all of these one-score losses that you see across the season, what is it, 8 one-score losses? how many of those would have been wins had you actually emphasized running the ball? Run blocking is easier for your offensive line. Your offensive line is in shambles. Your offensive line, nobody can stay healthy. Your offensive line isn't coached well by Butch Berry, who doesn't know what he's doing. Run block, it's easier. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's easier. Hey, you go be the aggressor. You go push your man back. You go on the attack. And these guys, no matter who it is, name and name, Tom Compton, I don't even care. That's more beneficial for them. It's more beneficial for this team. And I understand that Hackett trying to spin like, well, Latavius Murray is not a 25 carry. Latavius Murray isn't signed past next year. He's not signed past this year. So for the love of God, what the flip are you saving him for? Poor Flip. Using Flip's name in vain today. But like, yeah, exactly. Like Latavius Murray, I mean, we have to understand he's not a 25 carry. I don't care. You got 3 games left. Run him into the ground. Run him into the ground. What is at the end of Friday when Chris Tucker's like, beat his ass, Craig? Like, yeah, run him into the ground, Craig. All right? That's what you do, Nathaniel Hackett. You take Marlon Mack, you take Latavius Murray, you attack with your offensive line, you set up play action passing, and hey, using Jerry Jeudy, finally, perhaps the right way. Maybe they've unlocked something with Jerry Jeudy, and yeah, it's all about Jeudy. Jeudy's a receiver. So, and listen, I know Judy's like public enemy number 1 or whatever fans think of him now, but it's like, he's a me guy. He's a receiver. Brandon Stokely's a me guy. He might be the ultimate me guy. All right. And I love B Stoke. I love him. But the receivers are just different. They're just like, give me the ball. I don't have the ball. I want the ball. Give me the ball. Where's the ball? I want the ball. Yeah. And you just want to shut them up by throwing him the ball. So is Jerry Jeudy a little cantankerous if he doesn't get the ball? Yep. Does that bother me? No. Why? Because there's a WR next to his name. And that's exactly what those players are. Any receiver across the board, very few in history have been just like, those solid, like totally reserved guys. Maybe Larry Fitzgerald, maybe if I think of current receivers. But yeah, all receivers are divas. So feed the diva. They're doing that. They're running the ball. They're feeding the diva using Greg Dulcich. Like, this makes sense. And the conversation of, well, would they have looked good with Russell Wilson? Yeah, they'd look better. Brett Rippon's not good, everybody. Okay? Brett Rippon's okay, and he's smart, and he's a nice guy, and I don't want to rip on him because he's a third-string quarterback. He's a Trace McSorley that just happens to be the number 2 because Denver, for whatever reason, is fascinated with him. So, would they have looked better with Russell Wilson? I think it is asinine, borderline ignorant to suggest that with Russell Wilson, they would look worse than they did with Brett Rippon. They were out there. They won. It feels good. Andrew Mason joins me. Mace, I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm glad you're here. We'll have a little bit of an abbreviated show today, my friend. But if a win feels good, the one thing we need to start with, regardless of everything else, is that a win feels good.
It feels good, and there's none of that pesky, you might have messed up your top 5 draft position with a win business that we'd see in other years. Of course, it's because you made the trade for Russell Wilson, but it is what it is. I think I would call it thus a very guilt-free win. It's okay to smile about it. And I mean, just I saw plenty of smiles, happiness, jocularity in the Broncos locker room late yesterday afternoon. It's okay to be happy with this result in the short term, and be happy with some of the younger players who played well. Be happy that Damari Mathis had another good game, and he's looking more and more like somebody who could create an interesting decision as to whether you're going to save some money and move on from Ronald Darby, because it looks like Damari Mathis has the CB2 spot on lockdown. I mean, there was a lot to like in this game. It's okay to feel good about it, but you can be critical about it as well. What were you saying about Brett Rippon, by the way, if that's who you were talking about?
Oh, yeah. Brett Rippon's just he is who he is. He's not great. He's not the worst thing ever. He's not the greatest thing ever. He's okay. I compared him to Trace McSorley. He's a third-string quarterback that's the second string because the Broncos are fascinated with him, whatever. But there's this notion of, with Russell Wilson, they wouldn't have looked as good. I think that's borderline asinine.
I think that's ridiculous. And actually, I don't know how much stock you put in the ESPN QBR metric, but I believe they had him third from the bottom among quarterbacks over this week that have been evaluated so far. And QBR, adjust for the quality of the defense you're facing and adjust for game situation, et cetera, and adjust for the difficulty of the passes. I thought Brett Rippon did a very good job executing the game plan as asked, but that doesn't mean I'm not looking for another backup quarterback as I get into the offseason, that I'm not thinking about a mid-round quarterback who at minimum can be your number 2 going forward.
Right. And look at all these positives, Mace. And that's why, like, I put it out on Twitter, like, this feels good. It doesn't really change, Hackett's gone, whatever. Like, there's still those big conversations, but today, Mace, just today, I want to feel good about a Broncos win. I want to talk about Josie Jewell and Jonathan Cooper and Justin Simmons and Damari Mathis. Like, I want to talk about Jerry Jeudy. I want to talk about the positives from this game.
Yeah. I mean, Justin Simmons now has 4 interceptions in the last 3 games. Of course, also has to be noted, Broncos have gone up against backup quarterbacks in 2 of the last 3 games here, but he's still making the play. Somebody's got to make the play when all is said and done. Somebody's got to capitalize. He's been doing that. It's another 5 interception season for Simmons. If you look as interceptions have gotten more and more difficult in the NFL over the last 10 to 15 years, you look at the company that Justin Simmons is keeping and the frequency of 4 and 5 interception seasons. It's a pretty elite company that he's up there with. Since 2010, there are only 2 guys with more 5 interception seasons than Justin Simmons: Harrison Smith and Marcus Peters. It's pretty good. It's pretty good company that Simmons is pushing his way towards, and that's why, like, if you start, there's the notion out there that Simmons is overrated, not as valuable, blah blah blah. That's hogwash. That's grade A, first class bullplop. Completely wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's completely wrong. Mace, how many people, speaking of something that was wrong, the reported no-shows, how many people really weren't there yesterday?
Oh, I mean, they announced a little over 18,000. I don't think the count was that far off. I think maybe it looked more like 20 to 23,000 no-shows. I mean, I'd say that the stadium looked to me to be about 2/3 full. And yeah, people were up going to the bathroom and all that. The thing that I noticed, Cecil, I actually had to run back out to my car and get my tripod about 25 minutes before the game. And the thing I noticed in the parking lot, about 25 minutes before the game, usually it's packed around the stadium, right? It's shoulder to shoulder, crowded, lines at the entry points. None of that for this game. And that's when I knew this was going to be that's when I knew for certain it was going to be a pretty sparse crowd. It was the perfect storm of 2 bad teams, no marquee quarterbacks, and you're playing an opponent that does not have a lot of fans outside of its home market compared to others. Right. And you kind of get a little bit of that for week 18 against the Chargers as well. I think the Chargers will have a few more fans there just because those that are Charger fans in the Rocky Mountain region will probably get there because it's likely to be a game that means something, at least in playoff seeding, if not for making the playoffs for them. So I think this was probably the game where the no-shows are going to peak. But it's a pretty telling sign, and it's nothing new. I actually put out on Twitter how the Broncos are actually averaging fewer no-shows per game this year than last year. So it's not anything new. It's just not something that you expected when the season starting, at all this excitement about Russell Wilson going in, and it's something that is going to be certainly a conversation topic in the upper corridors of Broncos business management.
Yes, they'll notice and they'll take notice. But May says, again, I apologize, we're a little bit abbreviated today. But just what are your final takeaways from this contest? Because, again, I'm just feeling good. I'm looking at the positives. I'm already thinking of next year. I'm already looking at players for next year. That's going to just be my process. But I mean, the changes are going to be changes. Okay. So I'm not going to go like it was 1 win against a bad Arizona team. Do they now keep Nathaniel Hackett and all this panic and this nervousness and this fear mongering that's out there? And I'm not going to be one of those people like they shouldn't have won because now they're going to keep Hackett. Like, no. The changes are going to be changes. Okay. For me, I want to look at the positives. What about for you, brother?
Well, I'll just first start with Nathaniel Hackett. yesterday's game didn't really change things. All right. If we're talking about Nathaniel Hackett being the coach of this team next year, you probably need to win at least one of those last 2 games against the Chiefs and Chargers, teams that are headed to the playoffs. You got to avoid going winless in the division. Yesterday was just, just basically kind of keeps things alive for a little bit longer. The last 2 games are going to tell the tale. What I liked about yesterday's game as we part is this. The second half, even though you had a bunch of players that you didn't expect to be out there, and probably a decent chunk of those will not be a part of the team when you get to 2023 and beyond, the second half, it looked like it was supposed to. When you think back of what you envisioned this team being when you were in OTAs and training camp, we knew Russell Wilson was going to be learning the system, but you thought, okay, you get the outside zone going, you start running downhill, you control the tempo of the game that way, it sets up play action, and then you have an opportunistic defense. And we saw that in the second half of the game. So even though almost none of the names executing it were who you expected months ago, it was good to see for at least a moment what it was supposed to look like.
Run the damn ball, play great defense. And it would have looked better with Russell Wilson. I don't want to hear anything otherwise.
They would have blown him out with Russ. I think they win. I think with Russ, they score 30 plus.
Yeah.
The first 30 burger of the season.
I honestly can't believe people are saying differently, but that's why you come to this show, because we're only going to shoot straight. We're going to tell you like it is. And that's the, oh wait, what's the old Paul Harvey? That's the rest of the story.
Yeah. You have to tell a story. You have to have a familiar topic, but an unfamiliar story.
Right.
And now you know the rest of the story. I'm Paul Harvey. Good day.
Good day. I love that. And the old Citrical. Anytime I pop a Citrical, because I'm old, Mace, I always go Citrical.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, yeah, we're getting old. We're talking about, colonoscopies and fiber. It's the kind of thing you talk about when you get old, my friend. I'm right there with you, buddy.
That's right. He's Andrew Mason. I'm Cecil Lammey. We're orange and blue today. We'll be back tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time with a full show. So thank you all very much. He's Mace. I'm Cease. Be safe. Be kind. Know that you're appreciated. Stay tuned. And please stay frosty.